Hey there and welcome back to another your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man video. And today we're going to be talking about episode 8, Tangled Web, which follows off from that huge cliffhanger where Scorpion beat the hell out of Peter and almost killed him until Norman intervened with a remote control glider and pulled him out of the battle zone. Oh, and we also had Harry and Nico make peace with one another whilst Nico remains angry with Peter. On top of that, it feels like Pearl and Lonnie's relationship is on its last legs for sure. Okay, so last episode was an absolute banger. Let's hope that this can equal it. Although part of me thinks that it has to be a cool down episode that's a bit slower and more character driven, since Peter just got Scorpion. So with all that being said, nothing else for it but to jump into the episode. Okay, so we start off the episode in the immediate aftermath of Peter's escape. He's been taken to a medical facility of some kind and he's not looking good. It's not really a scene designed to make you think he's in much danger at all, and seems largely to just be there to give the cool transition of Peter being all destroyed to the next day where he's healed up a bit and doesn't look nearly as bad. As Norman said, it's a gift of his unique physiology. So I'm guessing he can pretty much survive anything as long as he's not straight up killed, as his body has some sort of extreme healing factor. I mean, the dude got impaled and he's up and at him the next day. Sure, he's not 100%, but still, it's crazy. As I thought, Peter's getting a little bit of time off. Norman tells him that his suit is totaled, and while Scorpion and Octavius are clearly threats, they're not Peter's problem anymore. Norman thinks that law enforcement can handle Scorpion, unlikely, and he has his own plan to capture Octavius that doesn't include Peter. He also tells Peter that they might need to discontinue their partnership if he can't get his head in the game and realize that sometimes he needs to go past the limits he set himself to stop holding himself back physically. It is sort of framed here as a bad thing that Norman says this, but I kind of agree with Norman. Yes, I don't think Spider-Man should go around throwing punches hard enough to kill anybody, but maybe he could throw some that are enough to one-hit KO people instead of just love taps. The reality is that, suit or no suit, Spider-Man should have defeated Scorpion. He was physically capable of grabbing and holding back the tail until Mac took his suit power to the next level. Spider-Man didn't respond by upping his strength though, and so he got tossed around, which led to the pillar falling down on him, which got him impaled by the tail. He needs to learn when he should be holding back and pulling his punches, and when he needs to take it up a notch. He shouldn't be getting embarrassed and knocked out by Daredevil with ease. Hell, I know that this is supposed to be one of the early hints that something is not quite right with Norman. The beginning of the mask falling off and revealing who he truly is, but it doesn't change the fact that I think he has a very good point. Peter has to sneak out of the medical wing, and instead of being somewhat sensible and going home to rest and recover some more, he hears some squealing and leaps into action to try to figure out what's going on because Peter has no sense of self-preservation whatsoever. Turns out it's just Asha squealing in joy. I do have to wonder how loud was she screaming? I know he does have super senses to an extent, but it's not that honed in as we've seen. Anyway, the class thinks that Peter's been mugged, and when they disperse, he talks to Dr. Connors. It seems that his calculations for their project were perfect, and so she's managed to build the working energy device they talked about. As this is going on, we see that Norman's having a bunch of different animals shipped into the facility, and we see a lizard amongst them, so I'm guessing this is going to be about trying to replicate Peter's power or something like that with a different animal for a new generation of heroes, and Dr. Connors is going to get assigned to that now that she's free from their project, and hence she'll become the lizard. Probably a season 2 event if we get that far, but for now they're just planting the seeds. Also, that part where Peter's so sad that he feels like he's let Norman down, damn. Really is going to be sad when it's revealed that Norman doesn't really care all that much about him, or discards him when he's no longer doing what he thinks he should be doing. What are we thinking? Is that going to be the end of this season, or is that another season 2 and beyond event? Peter then heads home and Aunt May accosts him. First of all, they apparently watch The Bachelor together. I'll be honest, that is adorable. Then we come to some heavy stuff and some family bonding at long last. Haven't had a scene along these lines since that very first episode when May was driving him to school. Pretty much Peter drops all his emotional burdens onto May about how his life is falling apart and he's struggling to keep going with all this pressure on him. That he thinks he's not going to be able to be the person that he needs to be. They talk a little bit about Ben and how May wishes he was still around because he was Peter's role model, and she wishes they could talk about everything that's been going on as Peter grows up. She also just wishes that Peter had a role model to talk to. Part of me thinks that Peter's going to extrapolate that onto Norman, which just, it feels like the worst idea ever. But it is what it is. Kid has to make his own mistakes. We then come to some Doc Ock. The start of this scene is legitimately just so funny. His assistant interrupts him via video chat, catching him playing a video game, farming XP, instead of brainstorming like he said he was going to. Then he offers to bring him soup, which Octavius accepts, or rather, he won't decline. I love that they've made him into such a man-child. He has such a fun personality here. He's going to be such a great foil for Spider-Man. I can already imagine how angry he's going to get at Spidey's banter and teasing. Then a SWAT team bursts in and Otto hits his music, and he has a sort of dance montage as his mechanical octopus arms descend from the ceiling and start picking them off. He blasts them with lasers, blows out their ears with a sonic boom, then also tasers one for good measure. Also, I loved how he stuffed up his dance and hit himself in the face with that metal stick he was holding. Even when he's being cool, he's a dweeb at heart. You love to see it. It was doubly funny they built up this huge scene of him ripping through these agents with his booby traps, only for him to step out into the street and find Ross, a bunch of other agents, and also Iron Man descending down on him to arrest him instantly. Up to that point, the episode had gone out of its way to make you think that he's going to escape, and that this will lead into Spider-Man hunting him, only for him to get smacked down by a top-level hero instantly. It was just very funny writing. Subverted my expectations nicely. It's over to Peter again, where we witness a creepy dream sequence filled to the brim with all his current problems and fears, namely Nico not wanting to be his friend and ignoring him, the battle with Scorpion, and Norman feeling disappointed with him. When he wakes up, he looks over all the texts he sent to Nico that she hasn't answered, and then he calls her and leaves a voicemail where he apologizes. Once again, I'm coming out to say it, the dude did nothing wrong by hiding his secret superhero identity, and he shouldn't have to bow and scrape and beg to get some forgiveness or some understanding. I don't know if I'm the only person who thinks this, but it's pretty certain the actual story thinks that, hence the apology from Pete and how all of these scenes have been framed. He then gets a call from Pearl, who invites him over to her place, or rather, orders him over, so they can work on their group assignment for class, the one that Peter used to be doing with Lonnie. Anyway, they talk and bond, and it's all nice. Does he still have that crush on her? Is that storyline just dead in the water now? Hope so, because that age gap is immense. Either way, it was nice to see Peter have a scene that was just about him living his life and being a teenager. Shame it doesn't last though, as at this point the doorbell rings, and while Pearl answers it, it's Lonnie. She steps outside with him to chat, and Lonnie... At this point, he's actually starting to get on my nerves a little bit. Here's the reality, right? The dude has messed up his life massively. He straight up joined a gang, and then he's been icing her out. After her reaction to him joining the gang, and then seeing Scorpion attack them and almost kill Lonnie, you'd think that her silence and not answering his abundance of phone calls would be enough to get the message, wouldn't it? No? So he turns up and kind of acts like everything's all good, which is a bit ridiculous. And when she questions him on things, he once again brushes her off. When she tells him that with the gang scattered he can get a fresh start, he instead reaffirms his loyalty to the 1/10th and says that he's going to try to help them take out Scorpion. It sounds like a disaster waiting to happen if you ask me. Also, once again, this is why I wish there may be a few more episodes to flesh things out, as Lonnie really does go 0 to 100 in how dedicated he is to this gang. And in particular with his bond with Big Don. He hated this guy. Then he saves his life once, as in Lonnie saves Don, not the other way around. He gets a nickname and suddenly he's ride or die. It just feels a little bit rushed. Lonnie and Pearl then break up because neither are going to budge from their position. Sucks, but it was inevitable. Of course, Peter tries to intervene and begs Lonnie to come back since he actually knows just how dangerous Scorpion is and that Lonnie's gang really has no chance against him. But it doesn't work because Lonnie says he has to make hard choices to look after his family. Tell you what, that excuse is getting thinner and thinner with every single episode. Just waiting for that penny to drop. Demoralized with the state of his life, Peter walks home in a montage that echoes the first time we saw Lonnie heading back home in the early days of the show. Oh, better times. Peter gets home and nobody's there, but he sees an old photo of him, May and Ben, and thinks about how he needs somebody he can talk to in his life, just like he used to talk to Uncle Ben. So who does Peter think to go to speak to? Norman. Now this isn't going to mess with his head at all, is it? So he turns up to speak to Norman, which results in Harry being banished from the room in a very, very awkward moment. Peter then tries to have a heart-to-heart with Norman, asking how he's supposed to be better as a hero and help people when he seemingly can't do anything right. Norman lays it on him again that he needs to stop holding back because that's the reason that Scorpion almost killed him the other day. Scorpion was willing to do anything to win and use all of his strength, but Peter wasn't. He won't go that extra step that's needed, and that's why he failed. Well, that and the fact that he ran out of web fluid. Then he hits him with the old classic, with great power. Except it's twisted here. It's with great power comes great respect and evil music. Essentially telling Peter that if he's strong, he can be feared and respected by his enemies, which is pretty much the opposite of what Spider-Man is supposed to be. As we all know, the old classic in its true form is power/responsibility. The responsibility of knowing when and how to use that power for the greater good. Not for personal gain, not for revenge, not for violence and mayhem. Norman then goes to run a little errand, leaving Peter feeling like absolute crap. Yeah, fair. I don't think this partnership is long for the world. It is not going to last much longer at this rate. I wonder what the errand is though. I doubt that that's a red herring. I suspect it's actually going to be something very important. We then cut to the gang again, and they're all lurking in some random alleyway waiting for a meetup with somebody who can give them information about how Gargan got so strong. But the gang seems to be falling apart. They're scared and questioning Don's decisions, even getting into fights with one another. I get it, they just got rinsed by somebody leagues above them. I'd be moving neighborhoods at this point, going to the other side of the city to start again. One of them died. Hell, a bunch of them probably have broken bones and whatnot. Pretty sure one guy got launched into a car. That would hurt. I get why they'd be scared and angry. Chameleon then appears for the first time since he ditched Unicorn and Rhino, and after an exchange of money, he gives them the location of Octavius's lab. Too bad it's going to be all locked down, right? I'm thinking the only thing that's going to be there is some experimental drug that makes Tombstone into Tombstone from the comics. A human wrecking ball. Maybe even an albino? Perhaps it'll even alter his personality, make him angry. Could it cause him to turn on Don? He seems very loyal for now, but could that shift? Or maybe Don's going to get killed by Gargan and Tombstone loses it. We'll have to wait and see. The rest of the gang aren't really convinced by any of this, and so Lonnie has to hype him up, and they crowd around him cheering. Yeah, there's huge death flags for Don here. They're already starting to see Lonnie as a leader. Just remains to be seen who actually does the deed here. Then to finish up, it's over to Harry and Peter still in Norman's office just chilling. Peter's still in his head about what he's supposed to do. After all, Norman's shaken his confidence and is making him question the way he operates as Spider-Man. He confides in Harry about what his dad said, and whilst Harry agrees to an extent, he also makes it clear that Peter is Spider-Man and he needs to chart his own course, make his own decisions. Peter then says he has to get back out there, but he has no suit. But Harry reveals that he had something whipped up, and we finish with them getting out the classic red and blue suit. Harry tells him to go get him, Tiger, and the music swells. Hell yeah! That was awesome, hype, epic, yes please, and thank you! We're getting classic Spidey, but with a conflicted heart due to the different viewpoints that he's dealing with. I'm very excited to see where they go next. There's so many big story threads to wrap up and then follow through with in the future seasons. I hope they keep making this show. Great episode, a slower one today, but that was needed after the big fight with Scorpion. A cool down to recharge the storylines and get the characters into position for the next big battle. I'm hyped for it. So yeah, with all that being said, that's the end of the episode, and these have all been my opinions, and I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the episode? Did you like it, hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.